Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, Mark, like a dog for me.
Where's the goodies? Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
He just doesn't have the power to stand there and trade with Gerry Cooney.
Legs are almost gone for Eddie Gregg, it would appear. There's a hard uppercut, and down goes Eddie Gregg in the first round, and I don't think he's going to get up with any authority.
Big trouble here in round one. Cooney looking to put him away. Cooney landing with left and right. Cooney continues to land on from the end. It's all over.
The right hand buckled the knees of Norton by Gerry Cooney. First punch of the fight buckled Norton's knee. And another left hand scores it again. The legs of Norton wobble. Norton is hurt in his own corner. Cooney trying to measure him. Missed with combinations of left hand Norton straight up. Norton is about to drop. Norton is on his knees and finally slumps in the corner. He is not going to get up from this. The fight is over in 54 seconds.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. That's a couple of clips there from 3 fights that involved our special guest today. This is Douglas Viviani without David Cohen today. He's out training for his next match of wits with me, and he'll be here next week. But we have a great special guest here to take David Cohen's place, so to speak. Gerry Cooney, who is a former boxer, as we know. He's a winner of the New York Golden Gloves Championship. He emerged as the #1 contender for the heavyweight championship of the world. He's ranked, believe it or not, 53. He's pretty good on the Ring Magazine's top 100 greatest punchers of all time. We'll talk about that. Gerry Cooney fought all-time great Larry Holmes in one of the most memorable and anticipated title fights in boxing history. We'll, of course, talk about that a bit as well. But he joined us today to discuss his new book, Gentleman Gerry, a contender in the ring, a champion in recovery. Gerry Cooney, thank you very much for joining us. Everything Old's New Again.
Hey, it's great to be with you. And I listening to those fights. Those were some days. Those were the great days back when we had a lot of great fighters and a lot going on in the fight game. And believe it or not, it died out for a while. Now it's coming back. It's big and strong. I'm on Sirius XM 153, 156 every Monday, every Friday, and Monday and Friday night the fights with Randy Gordon. And we are in a great time for boxing.
That's what I wanted to ask you about, too, and we could do that right now, which is a great segue here, but I wanted to talk about the boxing game a little bit. We had a couple of shows back, we talked about you, and we talked about the 1970s and 80s, how boxing was, of course, even before then, Jack Dempsey, and we go all the way back to gentleman Jim Corbett in that show we talk about. But the bottom line is, there seemed to be a little bit of a lack here of interest, and, at this point in time, I bet you most Americans would have a hard time presenting who was or is the champion right now, the heavyweight champion of the world. But back in the day, everyone knew that. So hopefully we're getting back to a point where boxing becomes a household name again. Do you think some point in time that's going to happen, or where are we on that?
Well, it's great question. And yes, I do. And what happened was boxing got off regular CBS, NBC, ABC television. And so the little kids who couldn't afford HBO and Showtime and pay-per-view didn't get a chance to watch it, so a lot of people pulled away from it for that. And also I think back then, Don King, in my opinion, raped and robbed the game.
Right.
He took the heart out of boxing. And so, like for me, I'm ranked #1 in the world. I can't get a fight because Don King owns everybody except for me.
And so, yeah.
And that's kind of slipped away now. We got great guys out there. We got Lou DiBella. We got Joe DeGuardia. We got The Zone. We got top-ranked Bob Arum, who's been in the game for 50 years, putting on some of the greatest fights of all time. So, listen, it's a very hopeful time, and it's back on regular mainstream television. It's on BBC, ESPN, ESPN Plus. So it's a lot more visible for everybody.
Yeah, I remember those days. I'm sure you do too. Growing up with Wide World of Sports, and you'd see maybe the Muhammad Ali Frazier fight. Of course, it was a rerun; you had to see it in, but you would see it, and they'd have both boxers. I think they did that with you as well, with Gerry Cooney. We're talking with here with Howard Cosell and the Holmes fight, where afterwards you'd sit in the studio and talk about the fight round by round. That was so great to do that, and that was a Saturday afternoon for a kid of 10 years old, let's say, like myself at the time. That you really got into the sport because it was right there in the afternoon, and even Friday night fights before then in the 50s, I'm sure. So I'm hoping they get back to something like that where they do the Friday night fights. Did I hear a rumor they were doing something of that nature?
Well, Doug, also the fact that the Olympic team in America dropped away when it got off mainstream television. Now it's coming back. We're getting better athletes, more experience, more interest, and I think, yes, it's coming back. The heavyweight divisions is building. We got Deontay Wilder, Joshua, we got Andy Ruiz, we got, Tyson Fury. We got 6 or 7 or 8 great guys coming up in the heavyweight division. We got the light heavyweights, the cruiserweights, the lightweights. We got Lomachenko. We got Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford and Showtime's Sean Porter. We got, in the welterweight division, we got a lot of great fighters that are starting to become exposed and seen on regular television. So, yeah, I'm so excited about the game. I love it.
Great. And we can hear you on, as you just said previously, on Sirius Satellite, Channel 157. Is it there every day, every week? How often is your show?
Well, I said 153. It's 156.
166.
And it's on Monday and Friday nights between 6 and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And we have a great show. We've been going all actors, fighters, movie stars, athletes, and we talk about the game that's really going well right now. I'm so excited about the game. When I first got into radio, I developed that radio face. I don't know if you have a radio face.
I sure do.
So when I first got on, boxing was at a lull. Now it's so exciting. There's fights on. For this whole month and a half, every weekend there's a great fight on.
And that's great to hear because we want to get back into it. I remember those days, and it's great to hear. And I would love to see boxing back up to it, baseball, basketball, football, where we're all, we all know what's going on and people are involved. And let's go back a little bit in time here. There was that those fights we just heard, but also just specifically talking about your book, Gentleman Gerry. You mentioned that at the time that you fought Jimmy Young and beat him, that was the time you first got into the national limelight with national TV spotlight there on a fight. You solidified you as a #1 contender. You got a cover of Sports Illustrated after that. But you also mentioned in the book how even at that level where that was, you were advanced, I didn't count them up, but it's got to be about 18, 19, 20 fights into the game that you learned to go to the body, or at least maybe relearned and remembered that it was important to go to the body when you've got your adversary in trouble, not just hitting the head. And you mentioned that. I found it interesting that you're that advanced. You had quite a number of amateur bouts, and now you have quite a number of pro bouts, and you're still learning. Is that possible as a boxer growing up to be a pro and still learn as you go along?
Oh, Doug, yes. And yes, I when I was a kid, I was 17, I saw my older brother Tom out in the bar, and he kept banging against the people. Was crowded, and this big guy stood up and called him outside. So when I went outside with my brother, I saw my brother hit him with a right hand to the body and a left hook on the chin, and it knocked all the wind out of him, and then on the chin it knocked him out cold.
Right.
When I saw that, I became a left hooker right away, and I love the body because the body breaks down the head. You can't get to the head necessarily all the time, but if you break down the body, the legs will fall. And
you did that with your devastating left hand. I guess you could say mostly, you jabbed a lot with the left, but the left hook to the body was really quite a punch for you. Now, you were a natural lefty, I believe, correct?
I did not know it at the time, but I'm a converted southpaw, but I fought right-handed all the time. And
that's what I was going to ask. It was interesting. Go ahead, yes.
It was great for my left jab because it was all my power. I throw 25 jabs around. I throw about 5 right hands. So my left hand was like a right hand all the time, and that set everything up for me. And I had great teachers. John Capabianco was the amateurs. I got Victor Valley in the pros, and I developed, and it's funny, but you play it forward. Now I get a chance to train guys, and I'm, working hard to take these guys past the place that I got.
Which is a great story unto itself, which we will get into in our next section here. I want to read a little bit from the back of the book here of Gentleman Gerry, a quote from Jack Reese, who's a world championship boxing referee and judge. What an experience for anyone who reads this book. Take this journey through the real-life struggles in and out of the ring of a top heavyweight contender, where you'll become aware of the human spirit of a fighter. That's Gerry Cooney. We have Gerry Cooney right here on Everything Old is New Again. The book, Gerry Cooney's new book, of course, is Gentleman Gerry, a contender in the ring, a champion in recovery. We'll find out what this recovery reference is as we proceed as well. We'll be back right after this on Everything Old is New Again.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
A good right by Cooney. A much better round for Cooney. A quick right by Holmes. Hey, Holmes was hurt for a second. Crowd is getting its money's worth. The corner of Cooney's. Oh, good right by Cooney. Good right. Valley implored Cooney, you've got to do it now. What Holmes should do is be wary. I see fatigue in Larry Holmes. That's why there's no movement. Larry Holmes is in trouble. He's covering.
There we go. We're back here on Everything Old is New Again with Gerry Cooney, who was fighting Larry Holmes there in Caesar's Palace, the outside arena there, let's say, in 1982. Boy, I hear that was like 100 degrees during the day. Went down to a balmy 89 at fight time. We're here with Gerry Cooney, who's got a new book out, Gentleman Gerry, a contender in the ring, a champion in recovery. Now, of course, unfortunately, in the 13th round, that was a TKO, but it was a heck of a fight. And Gerry did lose the fight, but he didn't lose many of his fans. He still was a hometown hero from Huntington, Long Island, where I grew up as well. I'm a couple of years behind, but we did cross paths here and there when I was working in McDonald's. Once in a while, a limo would pull up and the window would open. There was Gerry getting his Big Mac every so often. Now, there was a New York Times article back in the day after. I just want to read a quote or two, which I thought was very interesting. There's a quote here from a 25-year-old guy back in the time. The Times had asked people about the fight and about you, and it said, hey, this is Cooney country, it always will be, says one gentleman that was watching the bout. It is drive-in theater in Smithtown. Think about that. And other people are saying that, let's say, the supervisor, which is like a mayor of the area, was very proud of him, and he won 13 rounds. He's a world heavyweight contender and did very well. To us, he's still a champ. They wanted to have and arrange for a parade. So we all supported Gerry, but from what I understand in this book, if you look behind the scenes of what happened to Gerry Cooney after that fight, there was a bit of, you apologized and you felt a little bit, what would you say, depressed for sure about the results of that fight. And I wonder if you could take us down the road a little bit about losing a big national television fight in the championship of the world. Boy, what is that? The next day you wake up, what is that like?
Well, listen, first I want to tell you, it wasn't 89 degrees that night in the ring. It was 115 under the lights.
Unbelievable. Okay.
So it was very hot. And listen, that was a great time. And I fought Holmes. He was so patient and calm, and he was such a pro. And him and I are the best of friends today. And that's what happens in boxing. You get in there, you hate each other, you fight. After the fight's over, you become friends, and we go on and spend a lot of time during the year together. Listen, that was a tough time in my life, but that's not when it really ended, because in 1981, I knocked out Kenny Norton in 54 seconds of the first round, and I was on the map. I got made. I'm going to get a shot, Larry Holmes. You think I would have said to myself, well, let me get in shape, let me get a good trainer, let me take care of myself? But that's not what happened. See, I had a crazy upbringing when my father told me I was no good, I was a failure, I was not going to amount to anything, to help me learn how to survive. But what that did to me was that night when I knocked out Norton, I got scared. Right. And I started to drink that night. And that's looking back over my life, and in the book, You see, that's when my career really ended that night. Little did I know.
Which is interesting. If you look at the book, I'm going to read a real quick sentence out of it, page 129, talking about that right after the Ken Norton victory in 1981, which I think you just referenced. The deterioration process would unfold over nearly a decade, with each year consisting of a myriad of strange happenings in the often sane world that is the sport of boxing. But you mentioned basically the date that cocaine also entered into the picture, and I don't know, did you, like you mentioned now definitively in the book, definitively that was the end of your career, or at least that was the beginning of the end. Unfortunately, as an addict, did you know, even in the back of your mind, that this you were doing this to, avoid the feelings you had in your mind of inadequacy, I guess you'd say? But did you know that, boy, this is going to take me down the road where my career is ending as a result of this, or do you just kind of lie to yourself as an addict?
No, and I don't think I was an addict. I think I used it as a way not to feel.
Right.
Like people use food not to feel. We overwork out not to feel. I think it's a mechanism that we use that, if you don't take care of the engine, meaning me, it's not going to work so good.
Right.
And that's what happened. The alcohol allowed me to drink more than I should have been drinking, and I didn't get up at 6 in the morning to go running, and I made a lot of mistakes, but at the time, it was the only coping mechanism I thought I had. And I didn't have someone to grab me by the arm and say, hey, Cooney, come with me. This is really important now. Let's take care of yourself. And listen, and I love fighting, and I love New York. I love Long Island. And I was fighting with the hope for everybody who struggle in life, because I was struggling. And sometimes we get over it, and sometimes we don't. And that night, in the Holmes fight, I didn't have the tools. I wasn't prepared like I should have been.
Right.
And that's the bad side. The good side is that I survived.
Right.
I got out of the hole. I cleaned myself up, and April 21st, 1988, I ran into a guy, Jack B. from New York. I'll call him as Jack Brunette. And he told me to come in and sit down with him at a pancake cottage. And he said he hadn't had a drink in 3 years. And that was the last time I picked up a drink.
That's
or
amazing.
any kind of, recreational drug. And I got my life back moving forward.
Now, you did that, that's an inspiration. You did that just from the sheer conversation and will and support of this individual? What wasn't, how do you do that? So many people have a difficult time just turning it off like that.
I think I must have just been ready.
Yeah.
I was tired of being sick and tired. And this guy, I just happened to go into the pancake house that morning. I never did before. And he was there, and he said, sit down with me. And he just had 3 years that day.
Wow.
And from that moment, we've always been friends. We've always been great friends. But it made sense to me. Whatever he said to me, he said, you never have to drink again.
Right.
And I said, wow, I heard that 1,000 times, but not like that. And that was April 21st, 1988.
Great, good for you. It's great to hear. And the thing of it is, though, I have children, you have children, and we think about bringing up our children the proper way, and I think there's a lot more focus on parents these days than there were back in the day. But talking about that, some of we'll call it a demon, or some of that thought in the back of your mind that you weren't worthy, or a lot of people have this. They reach some success, and like you said, you were afraid of it, and you didn't have that support maybe of someone that or family members that could have guided you a little bit better through those times. Goes all the way back from what I could see in this book here. You're interesting how you open up about your life and your dad, who put a boxing ring in the backyard and started to train you, so to speak, but he wasn't the nicest gentleman in the world to you, and didn't build your self-confidence. So speaking of that, for a child that's going through a difficult time now that might be listening, where mom and dad may not be the most supportive of their dreams or of what they want to do, or even just of their daily lives. That kid that's 13 like you, or that would cower in the basement away from dad when he was home, or what have you, what message would you give that kid as you sit here today, somebody that went through that?
Here's the story. When I look at someone, they look fine. Everything's beautiful. If I don't put my hand out and tell you what's going on for me, you can't tell.
Right.
And so either you're going to spend years of dragging yourself in the dirt and not taking care of yourself and hurting people and hurting yourself, or you're going to become aware of what's happening. And my father did what he did because that's all he knew.
Right.
Unfortunately, back in them days, that's what they did. But I hid it from everybody, and the problem was no one knew it.
Right.
And so the idea is to put it out there on the table. Read, ask for help, go to your teacher at school and tell them what's going on. The problem with this mental problems is that they tell you, don't tell nobody. Keep it to yourself. Don't let anybody know there's a problem. And that's the worst thing in the world. We got to let somebody know close to us what's happening and to start the recovery process.
Right, because what we do as parents now, and in the reverse side of what you do as a child, of course, will and does affect you for the rest of your life until you are able to overcome that, through your maturity and your education as you did. So that's a great message, and we'll get back to that message and more of what Gerry Cooney's doing. A couple seconds left here. Quick, fun question. Do you ever go back to Huntington? Does it bring back good and bad memories, or what happens?
I always go back to Huntington. I grew up there. I have a high school friends there. I see people on luncheonettes. I see kids I went to school with. I have 6 or 8 great friends that live in Huntington still. And so, this is a great life we have. And I get the great part about it for me is everywhere I travel, I get to meet great people.
Right. And
spend some time with them, get to know them, let them get to know me. And that's what being a celebrity was about for me. And it still is.
And that's tremendous to hear, and it's great to hear that you're still were and still are friends with Larry Holmes, who says Jerry's a hell of a man. If he would have waited 1 year later, he would have been heavyweight champion of the world. To me, he is a great man. I always liked him, and we will always be friends. Again, that's former heavyweight champion, Hall of Famer Larry Holmes. The book is Gentleman Gerry, a contender in the ring, a champion in recovery. We'll be back right after this on Everything Old is New Again. David, with the rash of school shootings that we've seen lately, I think we've come across something that can help secure classroom doors in schools. It's called FightingChanceSolutions.com. If you take a look at that company's website, you'll see something called the sleeve. Have you seen this thing?
I have, yeah.
And it goes right on the hinge of a door that can't otherwise be locked, and it will lock this door from any intrusion.
Right, so it doesn't allow the hinge to open and therefore open the door, so it keeps the door closed.
Exactly. So if you want more information on the sleeve, contact FightingChanceSolutions.com. That's FightingChanceSolutions.com. Yeah, so if you want more information on the sleeve, call 888-559-6412, 888-559-6412, or, better than that, take a look at their website at FightingChanceSolutions.com. That's FightingChanceSolutions.com. Tell them Everything Old is New Again sent you.
Now, back to America's entertainment pop culture talk show. Everything Old is New Again, with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Michael looks calm, but when we spoke to him earlier this week, he really openly admitted to us that he is very concerned about facing Gerry Cooney. He said, I'm worried about how I'm going to hit him. I'm worried about what's going to happen when he hits me.
So now, Spinks will step up into the ring and face the Giant across 20 feet of canvas. Alex, what do you expect to happen once the bell rings in round 1?
Jim, I think the biggest single factor in the fight, obviously, is Cooney's power. But in the Holmes fight, Gerry was so preoccupied with his stamina and his ability to go the distance that he never really unloaded his power and took the initiative. Gerry says he learned his lesson from that fight. He'll jump on Michael from the opening bell. If Gerry Cooney can plant his feet, wind up, and hit Michael Spinks, this fight is over.
There we are. We're back here, and Everything Old is New Again. That's a little pregame, if you will, of the Cooney-Spinks fight 1987. We're here with Gerry Cooney, having a great time talking about Gentleman Gerry, a contender in the ring, a champion in recovery. A great book. You got to get involved with this book. It takes you behind the scenes of the boxing match itself. In other words, boy, after you see the fight and you know what's going on the outside looking in, you really don't know what's going inside the mind of the boxer, and you could really see that develop in this book. It's great. You have a discussion here in this book about the Holmes fight, a lot of the fights round by round, or at least as the action's going and what you're thinking about and so forth. In the Holmes fight now, we're talking about a time when you proved, because at the time you hadn't gone many rounds. It wasn't your fault. You had defeated a lot of contenders or adversaries with that knockout punch early in the matches. So you couldn't last a long time. In the Holmes fight, you went 13 rounds. So you finally had the ability to prove, number one, that you could take a punch, and number two, survive for 13 rounds. Did that, I know it's a consolation, but we hear this Rocky music a little bit, and I'm just wondering, did that have any kind of effect on you in the positive, that, wait a minute, at least I've been able to go toe-to-toe 13 rounds and take what this guy has to give for that length of time? Did you at some point come to terms with that was a victory unto itself?
Well, listen, here it was, right? I didn't have a lot of experience, like you said. I had a lot of early round knockouts. Don King wouldn't give me anybody. It was 115 degrees. But I was in there with a great heavyweight champion of the world. I learned a lot that night from him. I learned about, I wanted to prove I could go the distance. And so I'm trying to go the distance instead of fighting. That's inexperience. That's what happens.
Right.
But I that being said, listen, we fought our asses off that night.
Yep.
We worked hard, and he had to turn on the top of it that night. And that night we became close friends. And so, listen, it was a great experience. I loved every second of it, and I would do it again. He won't fight me, though. I try to get in the ring again. He won't fight me.
That's great. Maybe he'll appear on your show on satellite radio on Sirius. I don't know if that's in the works, but you could have a battle of wits at that point on channel 166. With respect to the time frame, Rocky came out at or about the time frame that you were on the way up, and I wonder, did it have any influence upon you when you first saw that? And you weren't the contender yet, but you were kind of struggling along and becoming the boxer that you became. Did it have any effect upon you, the movie of the Rocky itself?
Are you kidding? I remember watching Rocky, and then he got up and broke eggs, raw eggs, and drank them down in the morning before he went running. The next morning I got up and drank 2 raw eggs. It was like I almost got sick. And so, those are the movies. But I love Sylvester Stallone. What he did was show the world that the little guy can make it.
Right.
He was the underdog. He was the guy that wasn't supposed to make it. But he fought his heart out and got to the top. And, I loved it. I was on the cover of Time Life with Sylvester Stallone back in 1981 or 82. I'm not really quite sure, which year it was. But we had a great time. We got together. We spent time together. And, listen, I got a chance in the book. It talks about Frank Sinatra, Bob Hope, Dean Martin, all those guys I got a chance to spend time with back in those days. And, man, there was nothing like it in the whole world. That's
incredible. And speaking of Hollywood, this book is called Gentleman, Gerry. So I went back in time and pulled out a clip here real quick. I'm going to play a little piece of Gentleman Jim Corbett from 1942, Errol Flynn. Wow. But let's see what this rings a bell.
You know something? First time I saw you fight, I was just a bit of a kid. There wasn't a man alive could have stood up to you then. And tonight, well, I was just mighty glad that you weren't the John L. Sullivan of 10 years ago.
I don't know how we might have come out, say 8, 10 years ago. Maybe I was faster then. But if I was, tonight, you're the fastest thing on 2 feet. I don't know much about this gentleman stuff they're handing out about you. Maybe you're bringing something new to the fight game. Something it needs. Never got from fellas like me. I don't know. But I do know this. Though it's tough to be a good loser, it's a lot tougher to be a good winner.
Thanks again, John. I hope that when my time comes, I can go out with my head just as high as yours.
All right, the little clip there from an old movie, but I bring it up because a boss of yours, you worked in a gas station growing up here, and he presented to you the idea that you reminded him of Gentleman Jim Corbett, and now, of course, the name of the book is Gentleman Gerry. So that's a moniker that you have adopted in some ways, and so the question is, why is that, and how do you relate to that in the scheme of things?
Well, it's a good moment. Let me dry my eyes. Listen, that was a great scene in that film. I love that scene. Listen, my buddy I went to work for, He said I reminded him of gentleman Jim Corbett. Well, listen, I grew up in a bad family. I learned not to, kept me down. I hid in the back of the room and never said anything. But in real life, I wanted to help people. I wanted to make people feel right. I wanted to help them along their path. And something that never happened for me back in those days. But that's what I wanted to be, and that's who I wanted to be. And I've been fortunate enough for my life to be able to do that. And I love every second of it. People call me, tell me my father's sick. He was a very big fan. I said, do me a favor, call him. I love those things. Those are the most precious moments that we have in life. And I get to go play them forward all the time.
That's great to hear, and in fact, you're doing that now. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? You mentioned a little bit at the end of the book, but what do you do on a daily basis with children and so forth?
Well, I mean, I go to troubled kids and spend time with them and let them know that that we care about them, that we love them, and that if you keep walking down the same street and falling in the hole, you're going to wind up breaking your arm, breaking your neck, and eventually going to jail or dying. So we have to find a different route. We can't keep going down that road. There's a big hole. So I try and tell them, listen, I know you want to play basketball, I know you want to play football, or you want to box, but if you can't, you got to have something to fall back on. Stay in school. Find out what your passion is and work towards it. And then we box and we get rid of frustrations. They build confidence because now they learn how to fight. They learn how to box. They don't have to fight anymore. Once you learn how to fight, you have a confidence about yourself. You don't have to fight no more.
Right. And that's what, was something that helped you, from what I understand, in your struggles growing up, was you at least had the ability, to take out your anger and your frustration and the difficulties you're experiencing, through boxing and through training. So I guess that's something where you turned a negative into a positive, where you were able to, take that frustration and anger and hit the bag with it, I guess, right? Is that pretty much what boxing did for you?
I went to the gym because my brother left the home when he was 15, and I love my brother, and he wanted to be a fighter. He started going to his gym, and so I got to go a couple days and watch him. And I had a heavy bag in the basement, so I used to bang the heavy bag. Well, I went to the gym to see him, and I said, can I box that guy? And there was a smaller guy than me, but he'd been boxing for 4 or 5 years, and he smacked me around that day. And I threw the gloves off and went back home and said, forget it. But I went back to the bag realizing that he's going to come on me. And so I went back to the boxing gym where my brother was, and they asked if I could box that kid again at 15 and a half, and he couldn't do that to me again. And then 6 months later, I went in and won the middleweight title on St. Patty's Day or the day before in Madison Square Garden, and I won the middleweight championship, and that's how I got born.
And that's a great story. This one of a few that stories we're talking about here in this interview. There are many, many more stories of inspiration and behind the scenes of what it's like to be a boxer. And it's not just that; it's also a story of the maturity process of all of us, but of course of gentleman Gerry Cooney. And a little quote here from Steve Farhood, who's a boxing analyst for Showtime. Gerry Cooney has always had to fight both in and out of the boxing ring, and the fact that he's always done so gallantly and admirably is not lost on those of us who know him well. His story is compelling, and John Grady does a detailed job of chronicling all of it, from Huntington, New York to Las Vegas, Nevada, where Cooney's title fight with Larry Holmes stopped the world. Cooney's story has never been told this thoroughly and this well. It makes for a great read. I would wholeheartedly recommend that and suggest that that's correct. We'll be back right after this to continue one more section with Gerry Cooney on Everything Old's New Again.
This is Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
And that time, Gerry got a little left hook in and he wobbled Big George. Action late in the round. Watch the inside left hook by Cooney. There. And that punch moved George Foreman.
There's a good left counter by Cooney.
We're here back on Everything Old is New Again with Gerry Cooney. And that was a little clip from the Foreman fight, his last battle. Yes, and that had to be amazing to fight someone you probably saw fighting when you were growing up, right? Back in the day?
George Foreman, I was promoting some of his fights at that time, And then he came to me one day and said, listen, why don't you and I fight? And I thought, I never was without a drink before. I said, let me take this. I can do it clean. And I took the fight. It was, made a lot of money. I got in great shape, but I hadn't been sober. When you stop drinking, it takes a while to catch up with your brain. You work through steps and you do things to become more aware of the past. But I just, Gil Clancy told me, Gerry, move for 7-8 rounds. Don't slug it out with him. But I heard him with a hook to the body and a hook to the head. And when you're a puncher and you do that, I opened up on him and I got caught with a shot. But it helped me to turn the page on my life and get out of boxing and move on with my life. And it's been a great experience. I have a great wife with 3 great kids, and I'm so excited about. I got a movie in the works. I'm working on a television series at Netflix or Amazon, and as you said, my book is out, and it's just been a great experience. All those experiences.
I think that's tremendous to hear that you're still growing, still producing, still creative, still doing things that are enjoyable in life. There is life after your first career, if you will. You know what I mean? It's important to learn, especially when you've gone through such tough times. During your career, and there was a time there when you just because of alcohol and other things, and maybe immaturity, that your sleep patterns were disrupted by this. You don't realize that when you're training to be a boxer, that extra weight that you have to lose is not easy, and affects, I guess you'd say, also your ability to box down the road. And
well, no doubt about it, Doug. And what? I knew that no matter what, I have a picture of me when they would come to my room and open the door and say, Cooney, you're next. I got a picture of me walking down this dark hallway to the ring, and man, your life passes before you. But I knew once the bell rang, I had to fight. I didn't care about them introducing me or anybody else. Just ring the bell, because once the bell rang, I got to fight. And I was very good at that for a long period of time. I got a guy, for me, I made it from nothing to #1 in the world as a heavyweight contender. And I don't know how I did it, but I'm sure my God helped me along the way. And it's been a great experience ever since.
And I think also a message that you present in the book a little bit there is a story. You mentioned a little bit about it now, but your older brother Tommy, in some ways you say, had more talent at boxing than you did, but he lost in the Golden Gloves when you won, because he did not, and this is what it says in the book, prepare as well as he could have. Now, you've got preparation versus true talent and so forth. Tell us a little bit about that and what lesson we can learn from that.
Well, everything's got to fall together at the right time. He was a very big puncher and a good guy. He left the house when he was 15. He was on his own. 15. He was 19 in the Golden Gloves. He lived on his own, he trained, but he didn't like to run. And I remember the morning we got weighed in, I prayed to God. I said, God, if one of us has to lose, let it be me. Because I knew my brother couldn't take the defeat. I can't either. Nobody can, really.
Right.
But he went out, and I won the middleweight championship that night. And he fought a very tough guy from the Virgin Islands who came to New York. He had a lot of fights. But in a sub-novice, you're not supposed to have any fights. But nobody knew him in New York, and he got into the tournament, and he beat my brother on decision. It was a great fight, but my brother didn't stick with the game, and I did.
And so it's a sort of a lesson for all of us too, that preparation. If you're ready to do something or want to do something and you love doing it, that preparation is important. Like when you're doing your radio show, I'm sure ahead of time there's preparation. You don't just get on the radio. You're researching and preparing, and you need to know what fight, let's say, is coming up, or what your guest is that you're talking to, and what you're going to talk to them about. Right. So you need to prepare even in anything that you do in life. Just to even if you just have the greatest talent in the world, that's not going to do it for you if there's no preparation. Does that make sense?
And Douglas, that's so right. And a perfect line is, "Can you help me?" And I've asked that question. I've asked that question a lot. Can you help me with this?
Right. It's not.
And that's what we got to do. We got to learn to put ourselves on the table and take a risk.
Exactly. I find that also in life, that there's a lot of people that, I don't know why it's like that these days. It wasn't like that in the 70s and 80s, I don't think, but a lot of people, they have trouble taking responsibility sometimes for what they've done, and or they have, like you say, a difficult time asking for advice and consultation. Many people think, especially young people, I think these days, I have some young kids, and they think they know it all already, and they have that ego, and they don't want to ask for help. But it's the easiest question in the world, but one of the most important things to do is to ask for help, and no matter what you're doing, I guess, right?
And most kids, they're embarrassed.
Right.
You know, they're shy because they don't know how to do it. But just take a risk one time, and there'll always be someone there for you to help you.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think you could say there was a number of adults in your life early on that were father and father figures that disappointed you, but eventually you found a few that became important in your life that did not, not disappoint you.
You know where I found out everybody has fault, and I was looking for the perfect father figure.
Right.
There is no perfect father figure, and I can't have all those voices be taken away from somebody else. I have to work through them. And when I do that, I'm free.
Right. And that's...
I'm free to love my children like you can't believe, and to be able to have the love returned to me, and to love my wife and to be intimate as much as I can be now. It's crazy. It's a beautiful thing.
And that's the thing, is that you've come a long way full circle, where it's touching in that you must be, at this point in time, we don't mention the book too much, but you must be quite a dad to have learned all of these lessons from the struggling time when you were a child, and what that's like to not have the greatest parent in the world, let's say, to not making that mistake now, bringing up your children. They're lucky children, I would say. No?
Listen, I gave my kids whatever they wanted to do. We did it. I taught them how to box. My daughter's a great dancer. My son is a weight trainer. I mean, you know, we have to listen. 90% of the world is putting our kids down. We got to pick them up. Now listen to this. Then what happens? They go off to college and they forget all about us.
That's right. But they'll come back. They always come back at some point. It's that natural. I think we did it too as kids. You know, it's that natural. Let me get away from mom and dad is too much, so to speak. But then they realize we were there for the best and providing the best that we could possibly do.
No, but you know what? That means we did a good job. They can take care of themselves.
Exactly. And speaking of taking care of themselves, George Foreman takes care of a quote here on Gentleman Gerry, a contender in the ring, a champion recovery, so well. He says, Gerry Cooney is not only one of the hardest punchers we've seen in the heavyweight division, but also the most loving, sharing, and forgiving human being of all time. Boxing is better for Gerry. Just read and see. And I would agree with that. You got to get involved with this book. Gerry Cooney spending a little time with us. Gerry, what made you feel, I mean, your co-writer, John Grady, does put his point of view into this book. It's rather unique. In between some chapters, you'll hear his voice as to what he was going through when he had the opportunity to meet you and chronicle your story. But how about on the other side? What was it like for you to work with him, and what made you finally say, hey, you know what, yes, let's do a book?
Well, you know, I had been thinking about it for a while, but I wasn't ready. I mean, I had to work things out in my head, and I worked through it, and then somehow I ran into these two guys, and we talked about it, and we started to work, and the process was painful, but it was also great, and it was freeing. You know, I think about so many things in my life. I had all great people in my life. I had relationships that when they asked me about love, I didn't know how to deal with that, and I failed a bunch of times. You know, I wasn't available to be in relationships on a loving level like that. So things like that we work through and become free from is amazing.
And that's great to hear. It's a story of inspiration. It's a story of someone that really came from somewhere that was kind of a dark place that is now in the light and living a great life. This is Gentleman Gerry Cooney. The book is Gentleman Gerry. It's a contender in the ring, a champion in recovery. Just came out. It's a great book. I read through this, and I'm going to pass this around. I'm actually should say this. I'm going to pass the link around for Amazon for people to buy this book. And I really think it's a great read. It's a lot of fun, especially a local hero from Huntington, finally to get to meet Gerry Cooney after all these years. Gerry, thank you so much for spending time with us on Everything Old is New Again.
Thank you. And BarnesandNoble.com as well, Amazon.com. Listen, I love being with you. Thank you. Anytime. All right? It's
my pleasure. I look forward to it. Maybe we'll have you back to talk about boxing in general, something of that nature down the line.
Anytime.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be back next week and Everything Old is New Again, talk about all things pop culture.
Everything Old is New Again is sponsored by the law office of Douglas Viviani. Douglas Viviani has been providing quality legal service for over 26 years. We're a general practice firm and can handle any legal matter you may have for a reasonable fee. If you're involved in a car accident, starting a business, planning your estate, or need a criminal attorney, please call 631-681-1910 or email us at vivianilaw@aol.com for a free consultation. Get the justice you deserve. Contact the law office of Douglas Viviani at vivianilaw@aol.com.
You've been listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's pop culture entertainment talk show. Find us on the web at everythingoldisnewagain.biz. That's .biz.
See you next week. Same bat time, same bat station.